My name is Damien Pernuit. I'm a software developer, and we're going to be talking about Houdini Engine for Unreal. So a little about myself. I'm Damien Pernuit. I'm a senior 3D software developer at SideFX. I've been working there for roughly 7 years. I've been working mostly on Houdini Engine and the Unreal plugin for those 7 years. Today, I'm going to be talking about Houdini Engine. So I'm going to be quickly talking about what Houdini Engine is and how it's working. And then we'll be focusing on the Unreal plugin. I'm going to be talking about some of the new features we've added to the plugin in the last year and something, and what's next, so what we have coming up for H20 and onward. There's a very important warning. I'm a developer, so do not expect pretty pictures, do not expect amazing tool. You can expect technical details. So what is Houdini Engine? Probably know that, hopefully. But Houdini Engine, the main idea is you create a tool in Houdini. You can say, for example, a rock generator, an asset generator, a building generator. The idea is to wrap that tool in an HDA, which is a Houdini digital asset, expose some parameters, expose some input. And what Houdini Engine lets you do is you can bring that HDA and use it natively in Unreal, Maya, Unity. Houdini Engine itself is the API that lets you use this, but we provide 4 plugins that are native from SideFX. So for Unreal, basically we expose the native parameters in the details panel in the UI that you can control directly in Unreal. You can get assets from Unreal, either from the content browser or from the world, so actors, static mesh, splines, landscapes, bring them in Houdini for processing. And we have the same thing coming out of Houdini. We basically get the output from Houdini and create them in Unreal. How does it work? So here's the rough idea. We're in Unreal. You had made the excellent decision of installing the Unreal plugin. You have an HDA that you have in Unreal, and you load it. What we do actually under the hood is when you instantiate an HDA or when you modify an existing HDA, we start a process that's called House, which is the remote server, the Houdini API remote server. You can think of it as Houdini, except it has absolutely no UI. It's basically everything. Most of the libraries are running under the hood, and that's what Houdini Engine talks to. Once House is started, we create what we call the happy session. This is basically a pipe that connects Unreal and Houdini, and let us exchange data and everything. So that session we're using either a name pipe or TCP socket for communication. It's out of process. We used to have previously the ability to use happy in process, which meant that Houdini Engine was directly embedded in Unreal or in Unity. That came with a lot of challenges for library differences. We use TBB, Unreal uses TBB, there might be conflicts of version. It also has the other issue of if something in your HDA goes wrong and Houdini were to crash, we would also crash Unreal. So currently we only offer out-of-process sessions. Once we've created the session, we can now talk to House, so the no UI Houdini. Ask him to create the node that you just instantiated in Unreal. So inside House, we have that exact same node. We can then ask for the parameters, the input that we then display in Unreal. Next thing that we do is we ask for a cook, which is executing the graph on the Houdini side, wait a little bit, then we ask for the output of that HDA that we can then introduce in Unreal. Then we rinse and repeat that thing, so the user on the Unreal side just moves the slider, change an input, which triggers us to change the parameter on the input. On the node on the House side, we cook, get a new update. And that's roughly how Houdini works, very simplified, but that's the idea. So if I put it in a simpler way, that's basically what we're doing. We're communicating between Unreal and the no UI Houdini, which is House, to exchange data, create inputs, outputs, set parameters. Now, one day we had a brilliant idea. We're like, what if we remove House and instead put something which is Houdini with a UI? This would be cool. This would let you see exactly what's happening in Houdini when you're using Unreal. This could let you interact with Houdini, with the viewport, with your nodes directly. So we did just that and called it Session Sync. So I wanted to briefly talk about that because you're going to hear me talk about Session Sync, so just want to make sure. So Session Sync is your usual Houdini Engine workflow, except instead of talking to a program that you cannot see what's happening, you're instead talking to a normal Houdini with the full UI. So you can see your node as they're created by the plugin. As Unreal touches thing, you can see the nodes being created. You can unlock your HDA and start doing crazy stuff inside of them. Unreal's going to update as soon as a change happens in Unreal. If it's watched by the plugin, a change happens in Houdini. If it's watched by the plugin, you're going to get the update automatically in Unreal. So session sync can be extremely, extremely useful when you create HDA, if you want to debug stuff, like when you're making a new tool. Sometimes you're going to have differences, like the way the inputs are created by the plugin when you're working on the tool may not be the same way you expect them when you're just working in isolation in Houdini, so it makes you debug these kind of things. And yeah, it's always very helpful for troubleshooting. It has also the added benefit of letting you interact with the viewport in case you wanted to have tools that rely heavily on Python states or the Houdini viewport. You need some painting to be done in Houdini. So yeah, well, that's basically a rough idea on how Happy works and what is session sync. I'm not going to be talking about what's new, what are the features we've been adding in the plugin since roughly 19.5. First thing I'm going to be talking about is actually not new, but it's something that I've been asked about a few times, so it seems like I need to clarify this thing. The question I often get is, what is that Houdini logo on top of the meshes when I now create an HDA in Houdini? So this is what we call static mesh proxies. A few years ago, we realized that 70% of the time we're spending when cooking an HDA was actually Unreal building the static mesh. So static mesh needs time. Unreal needs to update the DDC, they reorder the triangles, the vertices, everything inside the meshes, so it takes a lot of time. And common user complaint was, well, I make a tool in Houdini, it's fantastic, like I move the slider, everything updates instantly. When I bring in it Unreal, it's very slow. Could you do something about it? We talked to Epic, and they were like, sorry, unfortunately, we cannot do much about the way the engine works. Like we expect this long process to be run in order to create a static mesh. It wouldn't be beneficial for the users to not have those. So instead, we went and created our own proxy mesh. So the idea is they're not fully featured static mesh, but they can be created really fast. And the idea for those is to be giving you feedback as soon as possible. So they are much faster to create than static meshes. But since they're not real static meshes, they don't come with all the features. I want them to be created as fast as possible to give you a very quick and almost instant visual feedback. But so they won't come with everything. They don't come with all the LODs. We don't build all the collision system and everything. So the important thing that you can do with them is that you can refine them. So if you right-click on one of those mesh, you have options in the menu to refine the Houdini proxy mesh. That turns them to static mesh. So that static mesh build time cost that I mentioned before is only paid once. Like when you're done playing with the slider, you're satisfied with the visual output, you can just refine to a static mesh and then you just use native Unreal thing. We can automatically refine those. Normally this would happen when you save the level, when you play in editor, or you can enable an option that, for example, automatically refines the proxy mesh every X seconds. Another thing that we've been working on is the KineFX integration. It's currently available in 19.5, but it's still in early stage. We're still ironing out some issue. The idea for us is to allow the import and export of skeletal meshes from Unreal and directly to KineFX. Basically, the way it works is that we simply have the ability to now import those and export those. One thing that's important, though, is the way the data is set up in KineFX. This requires you to use two HDA that we provide. So we have the Unreal to KineFX HDA. Basically, the Unreal plugin creates the data in a given way, and then that HDA, the Unreal to KineFX, is just expanding it to the two output. So the rest geometry for the first output and the capture pose that you can then use freely with KineFX. And then when you go on the other side, we do the opposite. So we take the rest geometry in the first input, the capture pose, merge them together in something that the plugin knows, and then we can create a static mesh on the other end. Those HDA ship with the plugin, and so they're available in the content not sync folder. Here's an example of using the skeletal mesh input. So we are right now in Unreal. We're just going to be basically bringing the default Unreal mannequin into Houdini. Just separate both the skeleton and the mesh. We're going to just do some changes to the mesh quickly. Merge it back together using those two HDA I mentioned before. And we're going to bring those back then into Unreal. Like we're going to have a new updated skeletal mesh, so a new skeleton, a new mesh that we can then update using the controller, and it's going to be able to be used. So once back, we have a new thing. We assign the controller to it. So basically what the HDA did is that it split the skeleton into, we modified the geometry and then put it back together. You could imagine For example, retargeting, like if you have your own custom mesh that you want to import from either Unreal or you have it in Houdini, you can import it. You can import a skeleton that you already have animation for them, and then use KineFX to do some retargeting to have them both working. Okay. Another thing that we've added as a beta, so it's still not finished, in 19.5 that's currently available is we have a new input system. So the idea is that new input system is reference counted, and it basically reproduces all the Unreal hierarchy on the Houdini side. I'm going to detail what that means on a future slide. But the idea is to avoid duplicating the data that we send to Houdini. So I will give you some example. We're here with the first person template, so that's a very, like the default scene. It's a fairly simple scene. We have 50 times the SM cube, like so the grayish cube that's being modified and used. We have 4 ramps, 12 quarter cylinders, 16 chamfer cubes, so the glue cube, and a bunch of others, so rifle and the skysphere as well. If I select everything and send that to Houdini using the previous input system, I get this. So I get 49 individual modes, despite having basically 4 or 5 different nodes. As you can see, they're very well organized. And every similar mesh is duplicated. With the new input system, when we bring that, you can see that I have not much. And we only create basically 6 input node, mesh node for dimension. So basically 1 input mesh for each of the individual static mesh that we actually needed to bring. So we have 1 cube, 1 ramp, 1 quarter cylinder, 1 chamfer cube, the rifle, and the skysphere. And then we have 49 actor nodes that reproduce the actors that we actually selected. So they're going to bring that geometry in the proper position, proper transform, put them in a proper place. And basically what that means is if you're bringing a lot of stuff from the world, from Unreal, if we've already brought that mesh, we're not trying to bring it twice. This makes it a lot faster because we're not doing work that we don't need to. This lets you share those meshes between different inputs, between different HDA. So let's say you have an HDA and you need to bring a whole chunk of the world into Houdini for processing. Previously, if you took a second HDA that also needed to bring the same part of the world for processing in Houdini, you'd have to pay the input price twice. Now it's going to be almost instant because we already have everything on the Houdini side. We also reproduce the Unreal path, so everything is reproduced in the exact same way. So my static mesh, for example, the cube, normally in Unreal is going to be in game/level prototyping meshes SM cube. It's going to be almost the exact same path in Houdini, just an added OBJ at first. And same thing for the actor. So if you look over there, I think we have in the node, we have like the actors are going to be in the same. You're going to have your first-person template map somewhere. As you can see, a content first-person level. Even the actor are going to have the same Unreal path. And the idea for that is, so I mentioned it was reference counted. So as soon as no HDA uses that input, as soon as it's not needed anymore, we delete the node. If not, we keep it alive. So that new input system is currently available in beta, simply because we currently don't support every type of input the plugin supports. We're currently working on that. It's probably going to be finished in a few months, I would say. So currently, landscape, DSPs, skeletal meshes are not currently plugged into that new system. And we have a couple little issues that we still need to iron out, but it will be on by default for H20. Currently, if you want to play with it, we have a plugin setting. So if you go into the plugin setting in the input section, we have this enable reference counting input system that lets you play around with the new input system. Another feature that we've added recently, which is node sync. Node sync is intended to be used with session sync. The idea that we have for node sync is when you're using Houdini and you're using it in session sync, you have the Unreal world, you have the Houdini world. You're only going to see in Houdini what you're sending with your HDA. So you need an input, you need an HDA to send that. Sometimes when you're working in Houdini and you want to do change, you're lacking context. Maybe you want to send some of the world around, maybe you want to easily send stuff. That would require you to create an empty HDA, basically, that just has an input and import stuff. So that was a bit wasteful and not needed. So we created node sync, which is when you're using session sync, you have this new panel that lets you basically just select stuff in Unreal and go send to Houdini, and that thing is created in Houdini. Similarly, the node sync panel lets you say, oh, well, I've created something in Houdini. I want to bring it in Unreal. I don't need an HDA. I don't need to bother. It's like a quickie thing that I've done. You can just type the path of what you want to fetch from Houdini, press fetch, and it's bringing it in Unreal. So the idea is basically this. So you're in Unreal, you select stuff. I'm always with my first person template. Send to Houdini, which we can do with right click. Everything is sent in Houdini, so we create everything. Since we are using the new input system, it's all nice and tidy. And it's very easy if you need to find a specific mesh. Since we now have the same hierarchy as Unreal, it's fairly easy to find what you're looking for. And then let's say, for example, in that case, I've added a pig head, wanted to bring it back into Unreal, so I can just get the path to my pig head using the node sync panel that's on the left side. Type the pipe to that thing, press fetch from Houdini, and the pig head's created. Obviously, you don't want to do that with pig heads, but that's what I do. Same thing, so node sync is currently in beta. We're currently also, simply because we want to add like more features for the UI. Like currently it's very bare bones. You don't have control over all the options when you're bringing something from Houdini into Unreal. Don't have the control, like do you want to bring all the colliders or the export option that you normally would expect to have from an HDA. But we'll be finishing and updating the UI for edge drawing. I mentioned I won't be doing sexy things. Data tables. We've worked on data tables and we've improved them a lot. It's not the most interesting. One issue we had, so for data tables input, we had a very quick implementation before that was basically sending all the values as string. This was extremely wasteful. So what we've changed recently was to have the ability to just basically send the data table value as the types they are. So if you have a vector tree, it's going to be a vector 3 in Houdini. If you have a bool, it's going to be a bool, an int is going to be an int, etc. And the other things that we've added in the plugin is the support for data table outputs. It's nice to be able to bring them in. Maybe you want to bring them out. The idea for data table output is you can either specify an existing struct. So you have the Unreal underscore data table raw struct attribute that lets you specify, I want to reuse that struct for my data table. If you don't do one, we're going to create one for you. Be careful because, yeah, you can create a lot of struct this way if you don't know what you're doing. And then you're going to just get the data table that corresponds, creating in Unreal. And the video works. We've been working as well on improving the support for chaos and geometry collection. We've added support for more attributes that lets you control clustering a little better when creating geometry collection from Houdini, so on the Unreal side. We're still currently not able to nest more than 2 levels of fracturing. That's one non-limitation that we have, and we're going to be working on that soon. So that little thing here is a very, that little window here, a good example of what you would be using, for example, Houdini for fracturing. In that case, we're using the RBD material fraction node in an HDA, and basically the idea is we do 3 types of different material fracturing depending on the glass, the wood, and the concrete part of that. We then bring it back. We have a nice geometry collection that's pre-fractured, but pre-fractured depending on the material type that can be then executed in real time with chaos. The thing that we've been working on is to improve nanite support. We've added support for nanite meshes, and especially one important thing that we've added recently was a new option that lets you send the fallback mesh or the proxy mesh instead of sending the full mesh. That's extremely useful if you don't need the full mesh in Houdini. You have a scene that's full of millions of like nanite mesh that are all millions of polygons, and you just want to know like the footprints of building or this kind of thing. You don't need the whole detail. If you're using the full nanite mesh, it's going to take a lot of memory, it's going to take a lot of time. If you enable that option to just say, well, no, I just want the fallback mesh, you're going to get a much slower, that's the lowest LOD, I think, that's available. That will make things much faster to send and much better as far as memory consumption. Since Epic is going all crazy with nanite, we had to do a lot of optimization as well. On the happy side, simply because the amount of volume of data that we have to feed through the happy pipe and Houdini Engine has drastically increased. And we're still doing a lot more. We've done mainly recently a lot of optimization on the attributes, and especially like strings. We're doing something terrible before, which was when sending strings, we're sending each value of strings. We're sending, for night mesh, huge arrays of strings. Now, if we basically realize there's only 4 strings or 1 string value, we stop sending millions of strings and just send 1 string, and then let Houdini handle that. Another issue we have is we were also exporting material parameters. So if you were sending a static mesh that had a material, and that material had material parameters, we were also sending those to Houdini, which is perfectly fine if you're a developer like me and your materials maybe have 1 or 2 parameters. If you're an actual studio and you have an Uber shader that has a lot more parameters, then that was a massive amount of attributes that were needed to be created. So we added the option to have the export material parameters to be optional in case you don't need and don't want them, because that could be wasteful. Something we've added recently as well is the ability to support multiple material slots. It's a very simple change, but it turned out that before, when you were using point instances, so using points with the Unreal instance attributes, we would let you override materials. You could set the Unreal material attribute on those points, and then you could change the material. That was great, except we only allowed the first material to be changed. So if whatever you were instantiating on the Unreal side didn't add multiple materials, then you were only had the ability to just change the first one. So you now can change every material. And same thing when bringing material in, there's something that we realized is if you had a mesh with multiple material slots, some of the materials were identical. We had a tendency when outputting the mesh back to fuse those together because we create the material slot depending on the different materials. Also, we had a possibility of reordering the materials, which could prove to be an issue in some case. So we are now basically prefixing the Unreal material with the slot. So that's what you see in brackets at the bottom. And that basically makes you sure that we never reorder or fuse material slots. Obviously, we've added UE5 support. Something that's important, and I've been asked also as well quite a few times, is we now have only one source code base as far as UE5 go. So we only have one branch, which is the UE5 branch. That branch supports UE5, UE5.1, not 5.2 currently, but it's going to be supporting 5.2 soon. And the idea for us is we're going to try and maintain that branch and support as many versions as we can. What this gives us is the ability to not have to backport stuff constantly. To give you an idea, every change we make in the Unreal plugin needs to be backported currently for 3 versions of Unreal, and then we need to backport it, those changes, I think 3 times for different Houdini versions. So I think that makes us do 8 backports every time. So now we have only one code base. And so if you're looking for the UE5.1 source code, just go into the 5.0 branch. That's where it is. We only have one. We're not going to create a new branch anytime soon. We've added macOS support for UE5 Plus, so 5.0 and 5.1. Currently, it's only GitHub release. So we've been having trouble with macOS simply because Unreal expects a given version of macOS in order to build the plugin. Houdini uses a different version of macOS, and that proved a little challenging on our build system. But so currently, the macOS binaries are available on the GitHub release page. So every production build, there's going to be a new release for macOS that's going to be in the release page over there. And we're going to be adding them to the Houdini launcher very soon. We're also waiting on Epic to maybe one day do an Apple Silicon build of Unreal so that we can also ship an Apple Silicon build of the plugin, but currently the ball's on the Epic side. And obviously, yeah, so as far as UE5 support goes, UE5 world partitions that created a lot of regressions have been mostly fixing bugs for a year. Especially the change in world partition, a lot of things stopped working silently and everything. We're still currently working on additional fixes with world partition, especially landscape and foliage. We're taking a big pass on the current landscape and foliage support in the plugin just to make sure everything is fine with world partition enabled. So what's coming next? As I've mentioned, world partition, that's what we're currently focusing on. There's still currently some issue with the way we handle everything when world partition is enabled. The idea for us is we want to make sure like every workflow that involves Houdini and landscapes, height fields is fairly thorough and works perfectly fine. So you may want to only send specific proxies or components of your landscape, not want to always send the whole landscape actors. In Houdini, we want to make sure everything is fairly transparent when you're using edit layers, paint layers, especially also when you're using PDG and you're using tiled height fields. Currently, we are still using like a pre-world partition workflow where each tile stands up to be a landscape actor, which is probably not ideal. So we are currently, and by currently I mean right now, that's being worked on by my colleagues as we speak, doing a pass on making sure everything is smooth. Once all of that is done, we're going to be taking a look at adding support for data layers. So the idea is to be able to generate and specify them via attributes. That's planned for H20. Level instances, so generate or specify them via attribute as well, and the possibility to instantiate level instances as well. And HL's layers will be coming, we'll be taking a look at them, but probably after the H20 release. Input, so I talked about it before, the new reference carded input system is going to be finalized. That's what we'll use as default. What this changed for you is probably just going to be a lot faster to send inputs to Unreal, to Houdini. And we're also going to unify our input. So currently the plugin has 6 or 7 input types. So we have geometry for stuff that's coming from the content browser. We have a geometry collection input, a skeletal mesh input. Everything is coming from the content browser. We have multiple landscape, Houdini asset, world input. All of those are a bit redundant. So what we've decided to do is we're going to solidify these, and we're only going to keep 2 input types, which is the geometry for everything that's coming from the content browser, world, everything that's coming from the world, and curve, which currently we still need to keep separated. It's going to be backward compatible, so that the only thing that's going to change for you if you're using the plugin and you update to H20 and you have those new inputs, you have less choice, but we're automatically going to convert previous input type to the new ones, and you're not going to lose any option. We're just going to merge these inputs together. Another thing that we'll be working on, something that's been mentioned quite a few times, was our inputs were taking a lot of UI space, so we designed them to be more compact. So you can see probably on the left side we have the old geometry input and the amount of space it's taking. The new input is on the left when it's fully expanded, and then at the bottom you can see when we collapse everything. So if you don't need to see all those options, you can just close them. That takes less space and makes it a lot more easy to use for you. Same thing for the world input. The world input with the new input the new input UI is slightly bigger when fully extended because we've merged multiple. So you have the landscape options that are now part over there. But when closed, you have the ability to get them take a much smaller UI space. We're going to keep our work on KineFX. So once we're done ironing out the last issue we have with skeletal meshes, we are taking a look at adding support for animation. So that would let you basically create animation assets from animated mesh in KineFX. Also going to finalize node sync, so that's what I mentioned before, finish all the options, improve the inputs, especially improve the UI, sorry. As far as Houdini Niagara and the Houdini Live Link plugin, we're not going to be doing much work on those. There's not too many required. We're still going to support the plugin, so any bug fixes, any support for new versions of Unreal that we're going to be working on. For Niagara, we're going to be taking a look at adding support for large files and file sequences. And we're going to also add both plugins to the installer. So they're going to ship alongside the Houdini Engine with like the regular Houdini install as well. That's not super sexy, but that's a pretty nice thing actually to talk about. The documentation is going to be completely rewritten and not by me. So it's not going to be a developer documentation anymore. That's actually great news. So yeah, no, we're going to completely rewrite the plugins documentation. We'll start with Unreal. We're going to be doing the same with the other plugin later on. The idea is to make it topic and user-based, so similar to what you have in the Unreal docs. But the most important part is we're going to provide examples for everything. You want to know how to do instancing. We're going to have simple, easy-to-use example in there. Everything's going to have example HDF files and everything. We're going to build example scenes, example HDA that are going to ship with the plugin, same thing. You can think of the Unreal levels where you have a little bit of collection of everything. We're going to be doing the same thing for Houdini. And we're going to introduce the Houdini tool shelf that we had in version 1. So you can easily use some of those example SGAs. They won't be just for like simple setup. Like we do have plans of giving something like a PDG setup for terrain and this kind of thing. So every simple case is going to be covered, but we're going to go a little further than just simple cases as well. And the last thing probably doesn't matter too much to you, except we're going to be working a lot on our regression testing framework. What that means is less regression and less bugs for you. A lot of work for us, but less bugs for you. I'll quickly talk about Happy, so the Houdini Engine API, which is what the plugin uses under the hood for talking to Houdini. We're going to be doing a lot of work for H20, improving performance of Happy. Same thing, what that means is data is going to take less time to be sent to Houdini. It's going to be taking less time to be brought back. We're going to experience and try to see a couple of things. If we could have threaded connections or multiple connections to exchange data between Houdini and the host applications. And we also want to see if we could do a memory buffer. So instead of having a communication layer, we could just have a shared memory to make all the data exchange a lot faster. And the debugging tools as well. And we'll be providing, for those who are interested in doing their own integration, we're going to be providing an integration code sample as well. I think that's it for me. Thanks a lot for listening. I want to give a huge thanks to my colleagues that work on the plugin, so Andy and Bob, as well as Jeffrey, David, and Malav, who are the co-ops that also work on the plugin recently, and the rest of the pipeline team and everyone at SideFX. If you got any question, I'm up for it.
Any questions? Right here.
Well, I don't really have a question because you covered a lot, but I just want to say, wow, thank you. I've been using Houdini Engine for a couple of years now, and these are a lot of amazing changes. Like,
Okay, that's glad you
really
like
nice.
it. I'm not the only one you have to thank.
Yeah, I know, but
He's here. Any other questions? Pass it over. Thanks.
I know it was sort of announced today, but I'm wondering if you have any indication of how this might fit in with the new PCG system in Unreal, and whether there might be a way for these two to talk to each other.
I would like to. I have no idea how this thing works. So from what I've seen, like it's currently just scattering of things. I'll talk to Epic soon and we'll figure that out. But I have no idea. I know they were working on something about that, but I don't know anything under the hood how it's working. So if we can find a way to interact with it, possibly. The one thing that I think it's runtime. So that could probably limit the integration, like the interaction we could have with that system, because obviously the engine is not going to be runtime anytime soon. If there's a way we could have the plugin generate some of the modules, for example, that could be used with this thing, there's always a way we could interact with that. As far as you, I probably don't know more than you do on that system. So if there are ways we can interact with it, I would love to. But yeah, I need to know more under the hood how it's working.
Very cool. Thank you.
Oh yeah. Does the proxy mesh generate a distance field?
No.
Okay.
It's just we don't generate distance field. It's just currently the implementation would be, it's based on what Epic has done for the geometry editing tool. So we started our implementation using, I think, something called Dynamic Mesh 3. That's what they use for geometry editing. It had a whole bunch of extra features that we didn't need it, so we basically ripped a lot of things out to make our own proxy. There's no distance field generated. It's just the mesh and the basic like normal UVs and this kind of thing. We tried to make it as simple and limited as possible because the idea is for that thing to be generated super fast. So no extra fancy things.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Yeah.
Hi, thanks for the talk. It was really good. I didn't really have a question. I just wanted to say I work at Double Fine, and if you're looking for a job and this is the thing that you do, let me know.
No. No.
Yeah, unless you're that guy.
But thank you.
Any other questions? Non-recruiting questions?
More poachers.
Good. Well, thanks so much, Damien. Excellent.
Thanks, everyone.